All right, and we're live. Welcome everyone to the first episode of the F and Growth podcast. Everyone asks us, people have been asking us regularly, how did you get to where you are? How do you grow? They ask us for advice on how we do the things that we do, and in an effort to grow and share in public a little bit, build in public as an agency, F and Grow. Okay, whoa, little intro there. Thank you, George, for that dope little intro. My name is Ryan Martirado. This is Joe Krug that I'm sitting with, the CEO of Finsweet. And like I said in the intro, we're just here to share a little bit of our knowledge with you. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about how we got here? We've been talking about this for a little bit. We teased it at the end of last year, and now here we are finally doing it. So what are we doing? Why are we here? What's going on?
We're here for you. We're here to help you grow your agency, your freelance business, anything you're doing in Webflow, and you want to get to that next step, that next level in your Webflow career. That's what this show's for. We're going to be sharing what we do at Finsweet, how we got where we are, and it's for all people to now know. What we're doing is going to talk about certain topics. We're going to get interactive with question answer, and this is our very first episode. Very excited for this. Really happy to share this info with you.
And we're going to try to get fun here. We're going to try to keep things timely and on pace, kind of like a ESPN. I forget the show that they do the thing, but let's show people what we got. We're going to break every show down into specific topics that we'll have on the sidebar here, so you can kind of know what's coming up. At the end of the show, we'll go ahead and break those segments up into small clips so that you don't have to watch this all at once. We're also going to try to take the audio and send that out to the different podcasting apps. And so we're going to make this content widely available in a number of different formats. But we just, again, wanted to get started, kick this thing off. We got a bunch of people hanging out with us in the YouTube chat. Madison, Mosher, Rohan, what's up? Chintan, Chris, Lacey, a lot of the OGs, the Finsweet OG family. And that's kind of what part of this is. We'll announce a little bit at the end. We're going to do some public office hours where we're going to get hands-on. So we don't just want to be up here talking down and talking out to the community, to the audience. We want to get interactive. And so parts of this, we're going to invite guests into the show. We're going to have live office hours where we're going to offer live support, real-time mentorship. We're going to try to create connections. And so stay tuned for how we're going to do all of that. This episode specifically is focused on how to hire for growth. As you can see, the different topics, everything is about taking your little freelance operation or your small shop and growing it to the next level. And so, Joe, let's get started. How do people make their first hire? When do they make their first hire? Where do they start thinking about taking that next step as to bringing people on? I've got too much work. I can't really handle it myself. I need to start delegating in order to really take that next step. What does that look like? How do I make that decision?
You said it right there. That's exactly when we started growing at Finsweet. When we got to a point where there were too many projects and one person or two people or three people couldn't handle all of those projects. So one way to start growing is out of necessity. Too many leads, too much work, and you need to lessen your workload. That's how I like to look at when you can make that first hire.
Yeah. Can you go like, and I know we'll talk a little bit about the different topics here, but like maybe talk to us about that moment when you were taking that step, right? You went from just Joe to who, and how did you do that? Like, walk us through a little bit of that progression.
Yeah, sure. The very first person I started working with were JavaScript developers, and that's out of necessity because I didn't know how to write JavaScript. The projects were becoming more complex. I was not able to go and do that work, so I needed to go out and reach out to somebody and go and bring somebody in to write that JavaScript. That was the first experience, and it did not go well. It actually went very poorly. I went through 4, 5, 6 or more JavaScript developers trying to find the right person to work with.
Yeah, so I think we'll get into some of the details on that, but that's probably the perfect transition to like the next section, which is like, where to find talent. Where did you go to look for talent? How do you vet your talent? Let's spend a couple minutes just kind of diving into the chunks of that, starting with where do
Yeah,
you find the
sure.
talent?
Let's start with Webflow talent. I talked a little bit about JavaScript, but let's go back into Webflow. We find everybody on our team, even the first person up until today, actively inside the Webflow community. People that are actively in Webflow, they're building sites, they're putting out clonables, they're communicating with the community. These are really powerful people to join your team if you want to grow in Webflow. So one of the first places I look is the clonable section. That's my Webflow homepage. I go click on that and it just opens the clonable and I say, who's putting out cool stuff? Who am I going to contact to see if they're interested in joining up with us? So that's one place to find talent. Let's
I think
talk
that's
a little bit
important
about other people.
I think it's important
Yeah.
to say that too, that like that also helps you. You've done some of the pre-screening at that point. You know, you understand how capable somebody is. You see a little bit of their work ethic. You understand their end product that they deliver, the care they take in their work, especially in those clonable sections, being able to kind of dissect their structure and their thought process a little bit just by seeing that end result. And so I think that's a big kind of takeaway there, is that you do a lot of the scrubbing. If you start just from that resume standpoint or from a job description, sure, you can get a lot of applications, but they're all kind of blind entries. Whereas what you're talking about here, scoping out in the community and kind of cherry picking the top talent, you've already done a little bit of that scrubbing. So I think from there, we can head into the next thought you were about to drop.
Yeah. Where do you find talent outside of Webflow? Like the JavaScript developers, there's not many of them in the Webflow community. So you're not going to have an easy time finding that in the clonable section. I've had really good success with Fiverr, surprisingly. Fiverr started out as just $5 tasks, but there's really good quality on that site now. And we have been cherry picking JavaScript developers from that site, giving them test work, try this out. Here's 10, 15, 20 bucks to go and test this out. Let's see if it works. And then you can come and try out some real client work. You could also try this going on to sites like Upwork, where they're review-based sites. And you can see how these people work with other clients. You don't want to get somebody who has zero experience. It's very dangerous.
Yeah. Real quick, you touched on a little something there about like going to these different platforms. Somebody asked in the comments here, do we hire, like, are you hire people as freelancers to start and then you come in and groom them? Are you typically making like full-time hires? Are you hiring for, you know, specific projects or tasks? And again, I know we'll talk a little bit about this, but just tell me about like, and then we'll go into the first full-time employee, which is the next topic. So maybe talk a little bit about how you deal with freelancers and making that transition. And then as the next segment, we'll jump into that first full-time Finsweet employee.
I love to ask what the person wants to do. You're working with a freelancer. What do you want to do? Do you want to build client sites? Do you want to work full-time? Do you want to just have a side project on the side with us? Let that person tell you what they want to do, because they have to be doing what they want to do. If they don't want to work full-time with you and you try to pitch them on full-time, that's not going to be a good match. If they want a full-time and you just want to give them little tiny project work, that's not going to be a match. So ask that person what they want to do, how they see themselves joining your team. And that is a really good transition in setting that person up with what they want to do.
Yeah. And I want to give Joe kudos on this. As I came on as the CMO, did interviews with all of the team, and the feedback that I got from the team about their experience working here was overwhelming. And it was mostly due to what Joe just said. He empowers people to do the things they like. He brings them on to kind of control their own work destiny. And I think that's been very successful. And so maybe that's another key takeaway for viewers, that if you're just jamming projects and tasks down people's throats, nobody's ever happy about that. But when you empower your team to kind of grow and do the things they love to do with resources and support around them, that's when you get really beautiful projects. That's when you get like the machine is really grooving, I think, at that point. And that's something that, we're doing a bunch of here internally. So Joe, any thoughts there, or should we jump over into the,
Yeah. Well,
okay. Yeah.
I'd like to give a real use case starring you. That's how we started our relationship, and you working with Finsweet. You had these plans to do this, this, and this in the community. And I think my first message to you was, how can I get you to do what you just said at Finsweet?
Right.
It's the same thing. You're doing what you want to do. You're motivated to do that. So that's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for you. It's a win for Finsweet. And that's a great way to approach bringing people onto that team.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel so empowered to do all of that stuff. So, and it's liberating. I've never had a job like this. And so, yeah, it's kind of new for me to understand that experience. And so anyway, let's not get too deep into those weeds. Let's jump into the next segment, which is talking about your first full-time Finsweet hire. How did that go? How did you go from just maybe parting out projects here and there, freelancers, to like going, okay, I'm going to take on like some real salary here, some constant load, payroll, etc. How did you make that transition?
Sure. First, I'll name drop the first full-time Finsweet employee, MemberStack co-founder Duncan Hamra, who is a really great guy, really good with Webflow, and was a huge impact to Finsweet in the beginning of our history. Duncan was brought on, and I asked him what he wants to do. He said he wants to learn Webflow. He wants to build sites for clients, and that's exactly what we did. We had a whole bunch of sessions working and learning the system, showing him how we do sites for clients now. And then he's just started working with clients, set him up with some small projects, then some bigger projects. And 1 or 2 projects later, he was taking the entire project by himself. I sold it. He started the communication with the client, and he launched the site with the client. This type of full service employee is incredibly valuable. Why? Because you don't have to spend as much time looking over that person. If you only have someone that designs or only have someone that develops, you're going to have to be in the process of the parts that person can't do. Someone like Duncan was able to do everything. So I truly stepped back. I didn't have to spend time or resources managing his project or his work. And that was really the start of, hey, let's add more Duncans to the team. Let's add more of these full service people so that we could take on more and more and more projects. And that's exactly why we brought him on in the first place. There were too many leads coming in for me to go and build myself. So I needed that extra hand. I needed somebody like him to join.
Yeah, I think that's good takeaways. People are asking things like, do you always look for well-rounded talent? I mean, we'll talk a little bit about hiring to fill a specific void, but we do have some multi-talented people. But you have something kind of specific that you always tell people about, like doing one thing better than you. Can you talk about your philosophy of kind of that threshold when you look at new hires and who you're looking to bring on, especially for these full-time roles?
The full-time role, it's really flexible. Right now, we will work with anybody that's really good in something. If they're a really good designer and that's all they do and they want to work with us, we can find a place for them to work. If they're only a developer and they do development really well, we'll find a place for them to work. Earlier on in Finsweet, that is a lot more difficult because as you have more and more specialists, there's more people to manage. So if Duncan's role was handled by 4 different people, we'd have to make sure that 4 people were doing their jobs. When you get to the full service, you only have to make sure 1 person's doing their job. It's a lot less time and resources, a lot less stress on your end. So hiring those full service people as you're going for your first hire, your second hire, those are really important. I do recommend going for that full service. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's my first thought on that.
that's something to consider too. Like, it's different depending on the scale of your operation, right? If you're growing and you're making your first hire, you probably can't hire 3 or 4 people to do those things, and it may get more difficult to kind of part that out. Which leads more to kind of hiring to fill a void, which is the next section. So let's move into just identifying, compartmentalizing, and kind of delegating work, because to hire someone, you have to be able to delegate the work. You have to kind of be able to, give up portions of a project or a full project, knowing that it may not get done exactly how you think it should be done, but then setting those standards. And so talk about how you look to fill specific voids, when you hire, how you hire, and how somebody should kind of take this mindset of divvying up their work to take this next level with their agency growth.
I recommend looking to hire for something that you can't do. Whatever that means for you, that's going to be a different answer for every single person listening to this. If you are not good at something, or you can't do something, or somebody can do something better than you, that's where you need to start looking. In the case of hiring Duncan, I could not spend my time working on more projects. I didn't have the time. I was not able to give the time. So I needed to fill that void of not having the time. With the JavaScript developer coming in part-time, I was not able to write JavaScript. So I needed to bring somebody in to write JavaScript. And now today in Finsweet, we do bring on specialists that do very specific things, because we have bigger projects that require those specific things that most people on the team can't do, like technical backend work, like animation, like video work. As you get bigger, you'll have to be more specialized. As you are smaller, you should not be as specialized.
Yeah. You kind of want more generalists, or more people who can carry the water when you're a smaller team. You need people that you can hand off and trust. And as you scale and grow, then you can start really specializing those tasks, so that you can just have one person editing videos and one person doing interactions, which goes to an interesting question somebody asked here. Mo is asking, are employees all better at Webflow than you? So are you still building? Are you still doing these things as you hiring people? Talk to me about how your role evolves as you fill all these people, or hire all these people to fill these voids. What is your role evolving into? What are you doing with your time? Like, how does that allow you to focus? Maybe touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. Right now, I am not building Webflow sites. I'm not working as the lead on client projects. I have not built a Webflow site in maybe a year now. I'm always in Webflow though. I'm in there every day, but I'm just not the primary builder. As you bring people onto your team, especially specialists, you are not going to be doing that specialized work, because the idea is that specialists should be better than you. So if we bring on a JavaScript developer, that person's writing JavaScript. I don't have to do JavaScript. We bring on the full service designer developer, don't need to do as much design and development. A goal in your business should be to step away from that work. If you are looking to scale your business and grow your business, you cannot be working on the tiny things every single day. You have to do it in the beginning, but you need to start working towards not doing that. Every single day, I'm looking at the tasks that I have and thinking, who should be doing this? Who do we need to hire to do this? And why am I doing this? If somebody else can do this, we're going to try to find somebody to bring on to go do that. So yes, the role evolves all the time. Every month, I feel like my role is just a little bit different because we're bringing on more people. And Reimar is a perfect example here. I was doing a lot with content and thinking about community, and now we brought on a professional, and now I can take a step back from that and say, I trust Reimar to do this. I don't have to worry about the community aspect or the marketing or the content aspect as much, because he's better than me.
Yeah. And that was key as much there, because obviously you still have to keep an eye over this. Otherwise, you're just kind of giving up chunks of your business that might walk out the door. We're going to switch to money here. So what if I don't have enough money? I want to switch this segment, but I want to start it with a question here that James asked. That's really, I think, a good framing to kind of talk about this. And he's asking about, is you're bringing these people on to do holistic roles and you're kind of giving them that 90% of the responsibility. How do you handle some of that money? Are there tensions? His question specifically was, how do you price out projects that you hand off to full service employees? And is there tension if they feel like they're handling 90% of the project scope? And so let's talk about that a little bit and then transition into what if you don't have enough money to hire. I think your answer will be kind of show that, because it's like splitting revenue, right? It's like it's kind of co-entrepreneurial with the way you handle this. So the floor is yours here to answer that.
Yeah, another great question. I really love this one. As you have more people on your project, it is a lot more difficult to price that out. And if think about it, you have one person on the project, you have one cost from the client, you know how to allocate that money between the company and the person that's working on it. If you have 5 people or 6 people on the project, everybody's putting in a little work here and there, it's a lot more difficult to pay out those people on a project basis. And we're seeing that right now. I wouldn't call it a problem at Finsweet, but something we are trying to really focus on. How do people get paid when there's 5, 6, or 7 people working on the same project? So when you're looking for that first hire, you're looking to grow in the earlier stages. Having less people per project is easier, a lot easier. The way that we do it is percentage based. So we have a cost from the client. Maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $10,000, whatever it is. The person working on that project is going to get a percentage of that total cost. That's decided before the project, and that person knows that's it. You're not getting less than that. You're not getting more than that. This is what you're getting. And maybe you finish it a little bit earlier. Maybe you finish it a little bit later. The idea is that if you keep working on these projects, everything will even out. Some projects, you feel like you got a little bit less than you wanted. Some projects, you got a little bit more than you wanted. That's fine. You need to have people that are flexible with money and need to be okay with that type of arrangement.
Yeah, and you also allow people to pick the projects they want to work on. And so it's one of the things I'll say is that Finsweet is not, it's not a centralized organization. It's a very flat organization, and people kind of have a lot of autonomy on the types of projects that come in and what they work on. And I think it's kind of selective to how that works in every situation. So I'm not sure if that answers the question specifically, James, but that's a lot of information about kind of that thought process. Now let's answer the question that we prompted, like, what if you don't have enough money? Which I think is a good way to do what you talked about, right? Joe's really good at selling projects. He's good at bringing in big projects that you as a designer or just a Webflow dev may not be able to land, right? If you're just starting out and you're a really talented developer, you're maybe not going to get to work with a Hello Sign or a Dropbox or whatever it may be, right? And so there becomes this partnership opportunity to have somebody sell a project and then fulfill that project. They still might make more money getting 50% of, a way bigger project than the projects they're landing on their own. And so how do you get to this? How did you come through that? Was there ever a time where you just didn't have the money to hire somebody, but you needed to figure it out? Like, help people work through that are trying to scale, like, these thought process that they might be facing in that regard.
Sure. When we brought Duncan on to start working on projects, that first hire, we didn't have money. Everything that we do in the beginning today is project-based. Almost nobody is salary-based at Finsweet. Why? That creates overhead. It creates a fixed cost that is dangerous, especially to a newer business. If you have everybody on salary and there's a month or two that projects are not coming in, you may start to get into the red there. That's not good. I recommend doing everything project-based and working with people that are okay with project-based. A lot of people in our industry are okay with that. We're freelancers. We know that money comes in at different levels each month. That is something that most people are totally okay with. And when you go to somebody and say, hey, we have a lead coming in, it's a $5,000 project. It's going to be 50% for you, 50% for Finsweet. Are you interested? That's a great way to get somebody interested in working with you. You have the client agreed to that cost. You have the person working on it agreed to that cost, and you're not paying anything out of pocket. So as long as that project goes smooth, as long as everything happens as it's supposed to, you don't need money for that person to work on it. You can take that money from the client, have the person that's working on it be paid, and then once it's complete, then you are paid as the agency, as the individual. That second 50% is for you once everything is complete and good.
Yeah. And this is another thing I think that people will have to make a distinction from between just starting out to hire and just starting to scale versus maybe having a more established operation. Because what I see happening now more and more internally, Joe, is that you're offering people full-time roles. Because I think you have the flexibility in the on-ramp to be able to say, okay, now we want to consistently offer this, and we can commit to a little bit of that fixed salary cost. Early on, as a startup agency or as a small agency, you may not be able to do that. You may not be able to guarantee X dollars in payroll every month, or you may not want to commit to that for whatever reason. And so again, I think that's a distinction between, are you just starting out versus are you kind of more established? I think the more established agencies, bigger clients, got a more consistent, steady revenue, can start making, they can project out and they can understand what their fixed costs can be. And as you grow, you get more comfortable making those decisions. Any other thoughts on the money stuff there before we jump into what some people have asked about portfolios and what you're looking for? And so we'll jump that into the next section.
Yeah, let's go into the next section, which I'd like to start off with a money talk, because there's a money aspect in when we look for people. So what do we look for when hiring? One of the first questions that somebody has asked is how they think about money and how they feel about money. When we ask somebody, hey, how do you charge for projects? How much is it for you to be full-time? How much would it cost for you to build this 5-page website? If they're too concerned about money and they're too concerned about hourly or going over scope or any of these things, that's a huge red flag. You want people that are flexible. You want people that don't really care about the money. You want people that care about the work and the portfolio. So that's number one when looking for people. You could be the best person in the world. If you don't groove well with the way we think about money at Finsweet, you're an absolute no.
Yeah. Talk maybe a little bit about then specifically what you're looking at in the skill set. I know we talked a little bit about that, how you kind of cherry pick out of the Webflow community. JavaScript people, just talk to me about, like, are you looking through portfolios? I mean, obviously you're going to the Webflow showcase to see what they've done, but in certain instances that may not be the right fit. So how else do you scrub? What do you do to kind of help you make sure you don't do what we're going to talk about next, which is failing when you're hiring?
Attitude is number one, over skill. So I'm going right back to when I was just talking about money. Attitude towards your work is more important than being a skilled worker. We've had people who are very skilled work with us and their work ethic is not right. That is a fail, that they just don't work. They end up not taking on any more projects because we don't want to work with them anymore. However, of course, there is a skill that is required. You can't just bring on people that have good work ethic and know nothing about Webflow. What I like to look for in these clonable sections in the community is creativity, clean builds. If you have a creative project, that is a big, big thumbs up. Let's take Carlos Toledo, who is a new hire at Finsweet. He was hired because of his Beagle project. And I can't remember the full name of this, but he released this really cool project with an interactive moving map. And I saw it. And right away I said, this is so cool. I'm so surprised that this was made in Webflow. Contacted him, and within a few days, he was working full-time at Finsweet. So that creativity, seeing something that really says, wow, this is awesome. That's one. Number two, just clean builds. Sometimes you see a site and say, this is so nice. This is so clean. You open it up. It has a neat and organized class naming system. You can tell that person has good CSS mindset, class naming mindset. They understand HTML. That's really important too. It's really different for every person. There are some people that we bring on that have a very, very small review process. There are some people that have a very intense review process. A lot of it comes down to the attitude, really. That I have to really clarify that as number one. The attitude and the work ethic, being ready to do this type of work.
Yeah. Well, and we have a very high level of expectation for the finished work that we deliver at Finsweet. And I think part of what you're saying there is that we expect the individual, each individual, to hold themselves to a specific standard, because if everyone in the organization doesn't like personally hold themselves to these standards, then as an entire organization, we can't do that. And I think that it becomes a threshold too, to just, and this goes back to looking through the community, exploring people's work, seeing real hands-on stuff. One of the things I love about the tech industry is that things are fairly binary in the concept of they either work or they don't, right? You can't BS your way into building a website or a web app or an interaction or whatever. And so like, you kind of just have to show your work, right? And so it's real easy to stand out, is what Joe's saying, is if you do something that stands out, if you do something that's interesting, you know, like those are who you want to be looking for. You want to be looking for people who are pushing the edges. The problem is that sometimes those people don't want jobs, you know? And so a lot of times those people are building their own businesses and doing their own things. But that doesn't stop you either. When Joe approached me, I wasn't really looking for work either. You know, I was very happy doing what I was doing. I had the biggest year in my freelance career as my small agency last year. And so it was hard for me to kind of make that switch, but I see the value in being a part of a bigger team with other people that have that same skill set that can grow around. And I thought the opportunity to just come and work with that talent was just, you know, it's too much to pass up. And so you can draw people in also, right? And so there's other ways to compensate people. A lot of people want to work on cool projects. They want to be a part of something interesting. And so as a CEO, as a leader, as a person who's trying to grow an agency, it's incumbent on you to find ways to attract talent, and then find ways. We're interviewing somebody for a marketing kind of assistant position, and they said, I don't want to get paid until I provide value. And we're like, excuse? And so this is the kind of people that come to us, and this is the type of thing that you should try to grow inside of the brand, inside of the culture of the agency that you're trying to build, is to get to a level where people come to you and say, hey, I don't care what it takes, I want to work here. And that puts you in a really good position to attract talent, to kind of have your pick of the litter. Any thoughts on that before we move on to the next segment, Joe?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. Webflow can be taught. Webflow has a learning curve, but you can get somebody over that learning curve. So we do bring people on that have cool clonables and have really good work. We've also brought people on who have had very little experience, and their initial builds were not good, but their work ethic was great. So over time, over a few months, they learned, they got better. And we have people that are working on big enterprise projects that came to us with close to zero Webflow experience. So you can teach people. And that's why I go back to saying the work ethic and the attitude is so important. Because if you want to learn Webflow, you can learn Webflow. So there is that mindset of getting people that know what they're doing. There's also the mindset of, hey, let me spend a little time to train this person, get this person up to speed, and I know they're going to work their ass off for this company.
Yeah. Let's give people a little bit of inside baseball here. I just saw a question about, would you ever consider starting an internship-like program? And we don't want to reveal too much, but we are working on some concepts for training and education, and also some kind of referral system so that we can start sharing some of, we get opportunities for projects that we just can't take on all the time. And so we want to start building kind of like a community, a network of really reliable freelancers and talent that we can send projects out to. And so part of that will include training, certification, and just curriculum to do some of that. We're also going to be looking for contributions in all sorts of ways. And so just a little bit of inside baseball for the stuff that we're working on, a little tease for those of you who are with us up to this point. Joe, any thoughts on that before we jump into a little bit of discussion about failure?
Yeah, sure. I'll straight answer that question with a yes. We would consider a straight intern program, getting people in here ready to start working, ready to start learning, and see what happens. Maybe some of them start working with us. Maybe some of them fly off and do their own thing. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, great. Okay, so reach out, find a way to, I think on the, I don't know, maybe on the Finsweet they can send us a form. We'll add a submission form or something to the site for things like this. We also want to take some topic submissions, so we'll add that, and we'll have a section at the end where we ask for any other feedback about what we can do to improve this. But now let's talk a little bit about the dreaded failure. What happens when you hire the wrong person? What are the ramifications of that? Talk to me a little bit about, like, maybe just start with, like, is there a failure story you can share with us? And it doesn't have to go into details, but like, talk to me about a time you brought someone on, you were excited, you start getting the ball rolling, and then it's just a complete bust. Like, what does that feel like? What was that experience like?
Absolutely. We've been talking about good things this whole entire stream. And we're talking about Duncan, who is a huge success. But before Duncan, after Duncan, there were failures all over the place. It's going to happen because when you first start looking, you're not going to be skilled at bringing people onto your team. Now at Finsweet, we have 30 people on our team. I feel like I know what type of people we need to bring on. Right now, if you're just starting out, you don't know what type of people you want to bring on your team. So when I was bringing people onto the team, there was a lot of missed deadlines. There was a lot of people presenting work that was not their actual work. And those two things were the biggest problems. Let me start with the showing work that's not yours. I fell a lot of times for people that recopied work on Dribble, recopied work on Behance, changed some colors, moved some things around, and then they presented it as theirs. So I'm so excited this person to start, introduce them to the client. They do the first view, the first look for the client, and it's crap. It's just total shit. And that's embarrassing. You go back to the client who you promised this level of design, check out this person's work, and then they go and deliver something that's so below their quality level. That happened a lot of times. And I would like to say that I was fooled by some of these people. When that happens, you have to pick up the slack yourself. You have to find someone else to work on that, or you have to pull some sleepless nights and go and do that project yourself. So that's number one. People not being honest. You have to be able to go and really figure out, is this person doing this work? Is this person at the quality level that they are saying they're at? The next thing is people that don't really care about timelines. This was another really big failure point of a lot of people. If somebody says, I need this on Tuesday, and you don't deliver it on Tuesday and you don't say anything about it, that is a huge fail for your business. If you say you're going to do something Tuesday, go and do it Tuesday. So we had people that were not delivering on time, and clients are not happy with that. And that goes back to the attitude. People with the good attitude, people with the good work ethic, that does not happen. So those are the two things that we failed at all the time. And when I say all the time, it was like, it got to a point where I said, maybe Finsweet is just me. Maybe I'm the only person that's Finsweet because I can't rely on these other people. Little did I know, I just didn't understand how to pick them out.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You're gonna make mistakes. Like, you're never just gonna always have 100% hires, great hires. The biggest thing is kind of knowing how to recover, and not making the same mistake. This is how we were able to deliver, or Joe was able to give us such thorough answers on all the things above this, is because he's kind of gone through some of these paces. And so that's how he knows what to look for and how to qualify people. And I imagine this is why Joe very specifically likes to hire from the community, people that he kind of watches. Like, I see it now as I watch him operate in the community, he's always saying, "Hey, did you check out this project or did you see this thing?" And then a couple weeks later, this person's on the team, and I'm like, "Okay, I see what's going on here." And so there's so much talent in the community to just do that. So I just go back to like getting to know the person and seeing their work. We've even had people that copied our portfolio, right? We saw a person just maybe like a month ago or right before the end of the year last year that had our work and a number of other really top Webflow agencies in their portfolio. And we were just kind of flabbergasted at that. And so don't do that for sure. But do you want to maybe say anything about that, Joe, before we move on to the next step?
Yeah, this is a great way to prevent all of this from happening. Give somebody a test, a small test. It doesn't have to be huge. A one-page website, 2 sections of a website, and say, hey, pretend I'm a client. I'm a this, and this business, and I want these colors, and I like these sites as inspiration. Send that mini spec to the person you're about to bring on and have them go and do that work. If they're not willing to spend an hour of their time to show you that they're legit, they're probably not a good fit for you. And if they do spend the hour and it's not good, you know that you don't have to hire them. If they spend the hour and it's great, you now have
the internet dropped.
Internet dropped.
It dropped.
It happens.
Yep. Damn, that was going so good. Okay. I hit the stream again. Maybe we're still okay. Are we back? All right. I think we might be back. So let's go ahead and just jump into the legal stuff here.
Yep.
We're not lawyers. We don't want to dive too deep here. I'm not sure where we lost the stream there. Sorry, it looks like we're having just a little bit of internet connection problem. But okay, so legal issues. Again, we're not lawyers. We're not trying to give you legal advice, but we wanted to talk a little bit about there's some issues that come up, right? You just got to start getting into payroll. You start getting into maybe HR stuff if you're growing a physical location. I don't know. So, Joe, do you want to maybe touch a little bit about on different things that you've experienced from a legal standpoint as you've grown? Any things you've run into? Any advice you might want to give people to, to just consider?
Sure. My advice is really simple because I don't know that much about it. The employee, if you hire somebody as an employee, you have a whole different set of legal rules you have to follow. There's a lot when the person's an employee, a salaried employee. When you bring people on as freelancers, 1099s, when you're working with people overseas, this is a lot more simple. And that's how everybody is at Finsweet right now. There's no official employees at Finsweet. Everybody is considered a freelancer, even if they're being paid a set amount each month.
Yeah. And I think that, in the remote world and in other, as the world evolves, as the way we work evolves, I think that's going to change a lot. Like our team is fully distributed globally. There's only a few of us in the States. And then if you look at our footprint, it's all around, the world. And there's different issues that you're going to run into for every kind of operation. And so the best advice we can give is talk to a lawyer if you're getting into any situation where you think there's any issues, especially around money, accountant, just kind of having some of that stuff squared away. And that's kind of all the thoughts I think I got on here. Let me go back, Joe. Maybe if you have any closing thoughts, I'm going to go back and see if there's any questions we missed, and then we can jump into just a little bit of housekeeping, a couple things I want to talk about that are coming up after this.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll say that this is our first show. We're looking to improve this every single week. We're going to be doing this on a weekly basis. And if you have questions after this, if you have feedback, if you want us to talk about certain things, if you have a follow-up question to this, send it over. We really want to make this a wonderful experience every week where you can sit down, learn something really interesting for an hour, and then go and use that immediately. So this is a learning experience for us. It's a learning experience for you. Let's all share information. I'd
Yeah.
love if there were some questions right now, because I love
Yeah.
answering your questions. I really do.
Couple questions that for sure we can ask. And one was, let's see, curious about, is it just design and development that we do, or are we offering strategy and branding as a company? And we just made an announcement about changing some of this, and so you can go back and watch that full press release if you're interested in detail on that. But maybe asking or maybe answering just a little bit about the types of services we sell and specifically what we're doing, Joe.
Sure. We are primarily developing websites for clients, for companies. We also do a little bit of design work for enterprise level companies for our biggest of biggest projects, but we are no longer accepting design work for most projects we are developing. We're doing a little bit of strategy. We're doing some SEO stuff. We're doing some back-end stuff, some technical stuff. And for you, you need to figure out what you want to do. If you don't think that you can really capitalize on strategy, don't offer strategy. If you are not developers, think about just offering design. If you don't want to do something, don't force yourself to go do it. I decided that I didn't want to do design. A lot of people on the team agreed with me, or everybody on the team agreed with me. And now we're not doing design. So we just dropped it. So you
Yeah.
need to figure that out for yourself. And you really need to say, what do I want to do? Where do I see this company going?
Yeah. That's right. 100%. The other thing to answer specifically is we don't do marketing strategy. Like, we're not running like ad campaigns for people. We do some basic SEO stuff as it relates to the website, but we're not running big SEO campaigns for people. We're not doing like a lot of that work around the edges. It's mostly Webflow design, development, and implementation with extensibility around the CMS, so adding functionality to that CMS. So let's look. There was somebody else asking questions about how we generate leads and how we bring in new business. We have a full episode dedicated to that, but if you wanted to just maybe talk a little bit real quick, Joe, while I look through any other questions here about how you generate leads.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to refer you to a project that we just released. We kind of announced it, not really. It's on our site, it's live, you can go to it, and it's going to answer this question in full. It's a storytelling, audiobook, visual read through, and it goes through Finsweet at step 0 all the way until year 3. And it's going to talk about starting with nothing, developing on Webflow, getting the big client, and then working off of that big client. So a quick answer is get a big project. Do anything that you can do to get that next level project, and then advertise the hell out of that next level project. Use it to get another big project, and then advertise the hell out of that project. And each time you get that big project, you're going to bring in more and more leads.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Joe, as you read about his strategy at the early stage in his Webflow career, was just taking projects. Without money, he said, hey, I'll take it. If you like it, then you can pay me. And that's how he, made some strides in that space, getting some of those bigger clients too, and just getting chances, right? Like doing whatever it takes. I think he responded at one point when I asked him a question about pricing. He said something about like telling the client, asking them what they wanted to spend, like what is your like target spend, and then just doing it for that, even knowing that it was way less than what he might have thought he should have charged, or then over delivering twice the value on that. So if he's doing a $10,000 website, delivering $20,000 worth of value, and that just launches you into a whole new stratosphere of the type of projects of work that you'll do, and that compounds. Another thing, feedback that I always like to give people when they ask this question is to go and build valuable things for people that have exposure. So pick a large nonprofit, pick somebody with a movement, pick a journalist that has a terrible looking website but great content, and go offer them a new website. Do something that is just going to put you on somebody's map, and you just might end up on Joe's map and get scooped right up and come work with us at Finsweet. So Let's see. What other questions? What type of websites are you building for your clients? E-commerce as well, subscription websites. Do you want to answer that real quick, Joe?
No e-commerce, no subscription. I don't even know if we've had a request for that.
Yep. Just marketing sites. With member stacks, sometimes we'll do some integrations with member stacks and things like that, some membership sites, but very hyper focused. Let's see. This confirms away. Okay, do you guys have a list of design freelancers? Keith, we addressed that earlier. We are coming up with some kind of system for a referral network for designers. We do have a few that we refer to, but we'd like to build that out. And we know we're going to keep getting more leads as we grow that we just are not going to be able to handle. And so we want to find quality people in the community that we can share that work with. And so stay tuned for more information on that. Let's see. Chris, you're welcome. I have flipped my headphones. Apparently my headphones were on opposite, so they've been flipped and corrected. Have you ever had difficulty selling Webflow development to a less technical client, like a B2B service provider? Okay, so we're going to talk about specifically how to sell Webflow, and we got a whole episode dedicated to that, but do you want to maybe address that question briefly here?
I don't think it's difficult to sell non-technical people on Webflow. That's the question, right? Selling to non-technical people. Talk about the editor. Talk about how they can take control of their website. Give them a comparison to something like a WordPress and tell them how difficult a change would be in WordPress compared to a change in Webflow. That is a sure way to get non-technical people interested, to tell them you can take control of your website. You don't have to contact me every time. You can do most of the changes yourself. That's music to their ears.
Show, don't tell in this situation. You know, anytime you can show as opposed to telling people, and this is no code's a great way to do that, you know. Okay, Cedric, how are you managing different employees and different projects with different tasks? Which project management and resource planning tools are you using? We just implemented ClickUp across the board. And so we're using ClickUp as a unit across the entire operation. We've actually created some templates and some structures for how to do that. So when we have new projects, they just go in and take a project. We have the tasks already built out. You can add tasks to that, but kind of, you know, like our rough checklist of what we want everyone to go through on each project, just to make sure we're doing quality assurance. And then tasks kind of get assigned out through that. We're also using Slack pretty regularly. So we converse in Slack. We use ClickUp to manage the project and any project related tasks. And that's kind of how we handle some of that project management. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Joe, did you want to talk anything about that?
Yeah, a quick note on that. We used to use Slack as project management, which is not a project management tool. We'd create a channel and it was that one person working on the project. Very easy to manage. That one person did their job, they communicated when necessary, and everything was in that one channel. Now, as we have more specialists, as the projects get bigger, as more people have to work on the projects, Slack doesn't work and it was starting to break. That's why we went to ClickUp, because now we need all these people communicating with each other. So that goes back to the beginning of the episode. Hire that full service person. It's a lot less management. It's a lot less quality assurance. That person can handle the whole process. They don't need to communicate with the whole team, which takes time, money, and resources.
Yeah, and I think the system grows around whoever's building the system. Joe was comfortable in Slack. Joe was working with a lot of different freelancers inside of Slack. And for him, it was a great tool to just handle these projects as it came together. Now we're at a place where, you know, like 6 or 7 people need to work on a project, whereas before it was just Joe and maybe one other person, maybe 2 other people. And so again, it really depends on, do you have 5 projects you're working on, or do you have 15 projects that you're working on, or 1 project? You know, how you manage that project is going to be very different. I will say that I discovered ClickUp in the process of making this transition, and I kind of wish I had been using it for myself personally for project management, because I'm so much more productive now that I can kind of itemize and store my task and see everything visually in that interface. And so I would encourage you to explore whatever system you want to use. There's tons of them out there, but find some system to structure that. It'll make you much happier down the road. Joe, how did you come up with the name Finsweet? Someone asked.
Great question. It was pretty random. I was sitting in a room and I said, I want a company name that has a secret meaning. And I came on Finsweet. And I thought it was so cool that I could say Finsweet and nobody would know it's Finsweet. And the first 2 years of business, that's what it was. I never used Finsweet anywhere. It was just Finsweet. And then I thought, okay, now we're ready to go and present this. We have enough work and we have enough energy to go and present this new name. We put in the hero, Finsweet Webflow sites, and then everybody flocked to it. Everybody loved it and thought it was hilarious and funny, and now everybody saw it. So it was kind of random. I consider myself a little lucky picking that name so early on. Finsweet was supposed to be just a side project, make some extra money on the side, making websites. So it really turned out well there.
Funny, some things just have, some things just work out. So Magdalena wants to know, what skills do you think a person needs to have build a successful Webflow agency? So as an individual, we've kind of talked about, the skills that the person needs to hire and what you're looking for people to do some of the work that you may be selling. But what skill set do you need to have, Joe? Maybe talking about your skill set, or somebody who's going to run a successful agency. What does it take to do all the things we've kind of talked about today?
You need to be a good leader and you need to empower people. That's what I am now doing most of my day. I'm talking to the team. I'm giving people the power to do what they want to do. When people ask questions, I don't just answer them, but I try to teach them why I answered that way. And being a leader is going to help you grow. As you get more and more people, this skill becomes more important. If you have 1 or 2 people, you don't need to be as much of a leader. When you have 30 people, or if you aspire to have 30 people, then you need to have that skill. So that would be the answer there.
Yeah. Real quick, I think this will be our last question here. And then I've just got a couple housekeeping things, and then we're done. We're right at the hour mark, so this is perfect. How do you estimate projects when a client comes to you, or when we do a proposal? Are you using tools? Is this just an internal methodology? Do you just, charge them? Like, how do you think through this stuff?
We'll have an episode that goes in depth about this, but the quick answer is try to get them to answer that question. When a client is showing the specs and the proposal, say, hey, what's your budget? What do you want to spend? I'm going to create a few packages. The amount you want to spend will be the budget. That will be the center package. I'll give you a little bit lower package and a little bit higher package. You can make an educated decision from there. That's a really good way to do it, because it's a huge waste of time to come up with a quote, spend all that time, and then the client comes back and says, oh, I wanted to spend $500.
Right.
That's not a good thing. So get them to answer that question. And if they can't answer that question, they may not be good to work with. Right. You want people who are prepared and ready to spend the money with you.
Yeah. And some people will say, oh, I can't ask people that because, a lot of people won't want to answer that question because they're like, oh, that's for you to tell me, and it's like, well, the way I overcome that is I say, listen, I need to know what kind of project we're preparing for here. Do we need the A team? Am I referring you to the B team? Like web development is a broad spectrum. There's people out here creating $100 WordPress sites that you can flip up and have overnight. And there's people selling $50,000, $100,000 Webflow installs. So there's a broad variety. And the better you get at kind of qualifying your prospects and getting to a point where you're in control of that conversation to say, okay, what's your budget here? That makes you stronger. Joe and Finsweet, we do it a little bit with a pricing calculator on our form. So it kind of sets the expectation of where you might be when you want to come talk to us, right? And so whatever you can do to set expectations that like, hey, we have a ceiling here, right? Or we have a floor here, we have a bottom. And so, you don't really want to be dealing with the fly-by-night customer. Like Joe said, you want to be dealing with people who are dedicated to building a quality product. And you may not get that option starting out or earlier on, but if you're looking to scale and grow an agency, you've probably kind of handled some of that, and you're probably getting bigger projects. So like Joe said, we're going to have a whole episode dedicated to kind of pricing and sales and how do you do the prospecting and whatnot. So I think we'll leave that for now. The last thing I wanted to say is...
One more.
Oh, go ahead.
Just one more note on that. So if you're trying to get that price from the client or the lead and they are not giving you that price, offer some prices that you may think they say. So someone says, I can't answer that. I have no idea. Okay. Do you want to spend 5,000? You want to spend 10,000? You want to spend 15,000? You want to spend 30,000?
Yeah.
You give that ridiculous range. And then the person's like, okay, well, I guess I'm more like a 10,000 person. Okay, great. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
So, push them in that direction by saying the values you want them to say.
Yeah. And sometimes saying some crazy like, hey, are we spending $3,000 or are we spending $30,000? They'll stick themselves somewhere in there, right? So if you show like, and 3,000 is low end and 30 is crazy, they're gonna be like, oh no, we're not spending 30. We're 5, 8, 10, whatever, right? They'll kind of reveal themselves at that point too. So okay, that's all we got. Those are all the questions that are coming in. We're right at an hour, so we want to be cognizant of everyone's time. What we're going to do next week that we didn't do this week is we're going to have office hours that start directly after this podcast. And so we're going to open up, we've got a gather.town workspace. It's limited to 25 people because we're using the free plan. If we start blowing the doors off of that, then we will open it up and we'll start paying to have some kind of platform where we can all hang out. But what we want to do is we want to spend an hour doing this podcast, kind of giving information, and then we're just going to invite you all to come and kind of work with us. Sometimes that'll be more structured, where it's going to be hands-on and we'll be doing things. Sometimes we'll invite guests to come and hang out and run workshops. And sometimes it'll just be us hanging out, listening to music, and actually doing work. And so we'll make a broader announcement about that after the show here. And so you can expect that after next week's stream, we'll go ahead and jump into a virtual co-working space, which again is going to be very casual. But we want to invite you all to come in and hang out with us. We want to pass on knowledge more than just this video format, which is kind of one way. Yes, you can ask questions, but Joe and I are the only ones talking here. And so we want to get into an environment where we can take that connection a little bit further. And so stay tuned for that. We'd love any feedback you can give us on how we can improve this. We had some technical issues, so we'll try to make sure we build some redundancy in the system and try to avoid some of that moving forward. But all in all, what do you think, Joe? I think we did a pretty good job here for the first time, and looking forward to kind of growing these things.
Hell yeah. Yep. Ready for next week. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Yeah. All right. I think we should end it with this thing. Bye, everyone. Okay, Joe, we're still live. I'm going to end it at the end of this thing here. Boom. Okay.